having me. I'm excited about this.
Yes, so I'm excited because I feel that very important topics that we're going to talk about. I kind of titled it Puberty to Menopause because as we start as a young girl, the biggest audience is our moms we're talking to tonight. As we start from a young girl going into puberty and then end up at menopause, there's a lot that happens in between. Those are
Mhm.
huge transitions in our life, and then there's a lot that happens in between. So tonight I want to kind of cover all of it. I know we probably could talk for hours on and on about these particular topics, but I want to give a snapshot of these topics of conversation tonight, just so that we can go away with some knowledge to be able to do just a little bit better when it pertains to these topics. So before we hop into the questions, though, that I have for you tonight, I want you to introduce yourself. Introduce yourself. Let us know, and we'll do this at the end as well. But let everyone know where they can find you. If they need, I don't know, you might be taking new patients or just on social media. Where can our viewers find you?
So, good night, everyone. My name is Dr. Juan Michelle Martin. I am affectionately known as Dr. J by all of my clients that I serve. I am a pelvic floor physical therapist. So, like I tell people, I specialize in everything between the belly button and the knees, pee, poop, pregnancy, postpartum, penetration, puberty, you name it, that's my thing. I've been a pelvic floor physical therapist for a number of years, a physical therapist for at least 13 years. So I've worked in a multitude of settings, whether it's the outpatient clinic that most people are familiar with, the knees, the hips, the back, that kind of thing. I've worked with professional athletes all the way down to youth athletes. I've worked in the hospitals, mother baby unit, labor delivery, you name it. So I've got a breadth and depth of experience as it relates to people going through that spectrum from puberty to menopause. But I especially decided to focus on pelvic health because there is not a lot of information out there. These are the things that we kind of sweep under the rug. These are the things that you're told, that's not polite table conversation. We can't talk about that, but in reality, people are hurting, people are struggling with issues that they need help for, and there is help for it, and we should get these things addressed. So that is my passion. I love to speak about pelvic health whenever I can. I love to empower not only women but men as well, because I do work with men and children who are having issues related to, again, the bowels, the bladder, pelvic pain, sexual dysfunction, those types of things. So I am a business owner. I'm the owner of JMM Health Solutions, which is located in Duluth. I see clients in person. If you happen to live in Gwinnett County, I also do home visits. And I see a lot of my clients virtually as well, because, there's that thing, COVID. She decided to show up like an angry person. So she's here, and I want everybody to be safe. So for those who don't want to venture out, I do see people virtually as well. Try to make things as convenient for people so that they can get the help that they need.
Awesome, 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 awesome. So as you can see, we are in for a treat tonight. So I'm so excited to dive in. So if you haven't already, please go ahead and share. Make sure you're sharing with some other moms who may need this information. We are not alone. I know you know another mama friend that need this information, or tag someone in the comment section so that we can go ahead and learn tonight. I'm all about learning, growth, evolving. And so as you can see, wealth of knowledge with Dr. J tonight. And so we are going to learn a lot. So I'm so excited about that. And I'm so excited that you do house visits. I think that's
Yeah.
cool. I never
Yeah.
had a doctor. I mean, besides my kids being born, in the beginning, they would come and they would weigh the babies and stuff. And
Mhm.
so super cool that I don't really know what that would look like.
I love to meet people where they are. And I'm a mom. I've got two young kids, and Lord in heaven knows, I know what it's like to try to wrangle two kids. I tell everybody I love early morning appointments. So I always used to have the 8 o'clock pediatrician appointment, but I had to be up at 5 to get my daughter ready, to get my son ready, to breastfeed the both of them, and then get everybody out the door by 7:15. Because at 7:15, my daughter would always go, Mommy, I got to go poop, because we were potty training. And she has to sit on the toilet. I mean, first of all, she had to take all her clothes off. Then she had to sit there and marinate. And I'm like, really? So it was like a process.
Yes.
And it's tough for moms. It's tough when you've got a new baby. It's tough when you've got toddlers at home. So for me, when I started my business, my thing was, if I can make things easier for moms, I'm
Mhm.
good. That's it. That's where I want to go.
I
And
love.
I had a mom I just saw this week. She's pregnant with number 4,
Mhm.
and they're really little. I had a mom with quadruplets. So,
Mm.
we sometimes, gripe as parents, oh man, I got the toddler and the newborn.
Yep.
Imagine having 4 2-year-olds.
Yep. Wow.
So,
So I love that you mentioned meeting people where they are. And so I teach business coaching with my clients as well. And one of the things I always talk about is finding things that's going to set you apart. Like,
mhm,
just being honest, all of our industries, they're flooded. There's a million people doing what we're doing. And so what is going to be those things or that thing that's going to set you apart? So I know in your industry that has definitely set you apart. So that's awesome. I love that. Love that. Love that.
mhm.
So let's dive right in. We're starting at puberty. We're going to end at menopause tonight. And so when it comes to puberty, I'll say I have 3 kids. So I have my son is 10, my middle child, 13 girl, and then my oldest, she's actually will be 17 on Thanksgiving.
Mhm.
And so I know that I didn't have a talk like with my mom. My mom didn't have a talk with me. So I wasn't like really prepared to have a talk with any of my kids. Don't want to have any type of talk with my son, if I can just be honest. And so I research stuff like I'm, reading parent magazine. I'm looking up stuff online. I'm finding YouTube videos. Of course, they're trying to teach them their way in school. What do you
Mhm.
a mom that has a son or daughter, like how do we prepare, how do we enter into the having that conversation? Like what are some of the things that we should do as our kids transition into puberty? And then I'm gonna put a second question on that, like what age should we start this transition or this conversation with our children?
They're never too young. I always lead by saying you want to be the person who is giving your kids information because you don't know what the rest of the world is going to give them. So
Yes.
there's nobody better to educate your kids, especially on those early topics, those early moments than you. When it comes to age, everybody thinks, oh, well, kids are too young. I can't teach them this. This is not appropriate. But there's a way to make everything age appropriate. And it starts by helping kids to understand their anatomy. They have to understand their own bodies. It's unfortunate, but I've met adults who didn't know which hole they urinated through because
Oh.
they assume that they urinated through their vagina, right? But we've got 3 holes as women. And it's unfortunate because they weren't aware of that. So it starts with having kids understand their anatomy. It starts by having them speak about appropriate anatomy. So we don't give pet names, right? We
Mm-hmm.
call the vulva, we call the vagina, we call the penis and the scrotum what they are, but you help them to understand that, hey, this is your body, these are your body parts, you are a boy, you are a girl, and you kind of help them identify with what is there. The other thing is helping them to take ownership of their bodies. They have to give permission to people. It's very important that we even start that at a young age, because when they're transitioning through puberty, we got a lot of stuff happening. We got hormones, we got emotions, we got all sorts of things, and anybody can come, especially for your young ladies. But
Mm-hmm.
anybody could come and whisper sweet nothings in their ear and tell them anything that might sound good, and then you know. So we want to make sure that we arm our kids with knowledge. And I usually will tell parents, take a step back. Take a
Mm-hmm.
step back. If your kid comes to talk to you about something sexual, don't just automatically assume that your kid is out there running the streets. Sometimes they may just hear things and they just don't know, and they're curious, so they ask, right? And you, again, you are the best person. So if you need to say, hey, give me a second, I'm gonna ask you a question real quick, but just give me a second. Walk away, take a breath, and come back. Ask them what they want to know, right? And think of them not necessarily in that moment as your child, but if this were some young person that wanted to have information, how can I educate them? How can
Mm-hmm.
I talk to them about sex? A 7-year-old, you're not going to be talking to them about sex, but you can talk to them again about their bodies, their
Mm-hmm.
anatomy, changes that will happen. You can talk to them about menstruation and what
Mm-hmm.
happens, just kind of give them the overview. When you get to a certain age, and it can vary, but sometimes around about 10 to 13 on average, your body will start to change. And one of the things that will happen if you're a young lady is you may notice blood, in your undies or whatnot. Sometimes you may have a little bit of discomfort, your tummy might hurt, Your vulva may hurt, and that's okay, as long as it's not like excruciating pain, but kind of help them to understand. Pull out the pads, pull out the tampons, help them. My daughter is 7, and we talk about it all the time. And we kind of got into it because when she was, I think she was 4 or 5, probably, I think she just turned 5. She
Mhm.
burst into the bathroom when I was in the bathroom and I was on my cycle. She saw blood and started freaking out. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Sweetie, it's okay. Mommy, are you okay?" And I'm like, I'm fine. And we sat down and we had the talk. And so now she knows. She goes, "Is the blood coming?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's that time." And we have a normal conversation about it. My son is 5 and he understands because I talked to him about it too. He asked me the other day, he says, "Mommy, my penis is up." I said, "Yeah, you're a guy. That happens sometimes." And
Mm,
it's normal and it's healthy. It's very necessary because your blood needs to circulate. And so that's part of your blood circulating. So it's very natural for it to be up like that sometimes. Okay, and he just walks off. And he's
okay.
5, but you don't, it's like when kids fall, parents say when a child falls down, don't make a big to do about it. If not, they'll freak out. Same
Hmm.
thing with body parts and sex and puberty. If you make a big to do about it, then
Hmm.
they're going to freak out, you're going to be freaking out, and nobody's going to benefit. So you just try. And again, if you feel that you can't be, oh my God, I can't do this. Oh my God, I can't. Just
Right.
find a friend,
Uh,
or if your spouse is willing to, if you have a sibling that can, if you know a medical professional that can, and have the conversation with them.
yes. Yes. So, Dr. J, very, very good information. As you were explaining with your son, I was laughing on the inside because I already told my husband I want no parts. You can have all the conversations. You can do whatever. If I see a closed door, I'm not going to enter. It's all as well. You take care of that. I got the girl. But it is healthy for me to be able to for him to be comfortable because hey, what if my husband's not here or something like
Hmm.
you do understand what you're saying, the importance of them learning from us and us having those conversations with them. One of the things that you said that I absolutely love, and I'm definitely gonna take this perspective from this conversation, is you said pretend like in that moment that they're not your child, they're just like another young person that's seeking your advice.
Hmm.
And that's a great perspective because it's my child, automatically I'm gonna go into defense mode. I want to
Hmm.
there, like, oh, like you said, that doesn't mean that they're running the streets. You got all these thoughts and conclusions that you're jumping to. But if it was a young lady, because I mentor young ladies all the time. And so if it was a young lady, I do seem a little bit more calm because I am trying to make sure I get my point across and I'm
Hmm.
actually trying to help them. And so that was very, very good. I love that. Thank you for that. I am going to start using that perspective. So love it, love it, love it. So one of the things I heard you mention as well, like taking out the pads and the tampons to be able to just share, have the conversation, talk about it. What do you feel, or what are your thoughts or perspectives on tampons? Like, I've been taught, and I don't know if this is right. And so, we have all these stigmas and things that we get passed on from generation to generation. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a big like Mr. Google, tell me what's wrong, tell me what to do person too. And so I know a lot of us who may be watching who go to Google first as well, which is not healthy. We should definitely be seeking professionals. But with the tampon, I've always been told that a young lady should not use them until after she has intercourse.
Hmm.
What are your perspectives on that?
So that is actually very, very incorrect. And there
Wow.
is some generational stigma to that.
Mhm.
And I say this because when I was young, I was told the same thing.
Mhm.
But I also competed as a high level athlete. I was a junior national athlete. I traveled for the national team. And I remember the first time I got introduced to a tampon, I was 16 or 17 by one of my teammates because I was bleeding. It was the first day we had a tournament. I was like, I can't play in this pad. This is bulky. My cycle is heavy. I don't know if it's because we traveled, and I am like panicking. And my teammate whipped out a tampon, and it wasn't even one with the applicator, y'all. She whipped out an OB. And I
Oh
was like,
wow.
so I'm
I
like,
those. Oh my gosh.
I love them now, but I was like, what is this? what am I supposed to do with that? And she was like, so she gave me a whole tutorial on how to insert, and it was fine. And I was able to play.
Mm-hmm.
I was ready to take it out when I was done because I was like, oh my God, I was so panicky and so worried because of all the things that people say. But it depends on your child. The one of the stigmas is if a child uses a tampon, they lose their virginity. Virginity is associated with sexual intercourse and penetration. There's no breaking the hymen. The hymen is just a remnant of tissue, the tissue that is involved in the development of the female reproductive parts. And so the hymen is just a remnant of that. A healthy female won't have a hymen present. If the hymen is present and it's blocking the vaginal opening, then we can't get the blood out when they're menstruating. And that actually has to be surgically repaired. So if there's a complete blockage, if there's perforation where it's a partial blockage, then that actually has to be surgically repaired. So there's a whole bunch of stigma around the hymen, and if your hymen's not there, then you're not a virgin. You can lose your hymen from falling. You can lose it from horseback riding. You can lose it from just impact activity. So there's nothing to that. I will say that if you have a child who is, for example, a competitive athlete, they're going to have to use a tampon. Like, there's no way around it. You can't expect a swimmer to use a pad. You can't expect a competitive gymnast to use a pad. I played volleyball. I have friends who ran track, so when it comes to performance, they're going to have to. So again, it kind of comes back to taking a step back and just looking at it from the perspective of what is their daily function? What is their daily activity? How can we maximize that? The tampon in and of itself won't do anything. I will say though, if you're going to use tampons, try to use tampons that are not that are natural, that are organic. So cotton tampons. There are a lot of different brands out there now. 7th generation. I believe Cora has tampons. There's another Honey Pot. All these different places. I think Honey Pot has tampons. So there are like all these different brands that are organic, holistic. There are no chemical additives to the tampons because again, you're inserting this inside the tissue. Within are very, they're going to be more susceptible to chemicals and stuff like that. And we also want to encourage the young ladies to practice good hygiene. You want to change your tampon every 2 hours. You don't want to leave your tampon in for extended periods. You don't want to leave it in overnight, things like that, so that they're practicing good hygiene, which is really the most important thing with tampon use.
Gotcha. Oh my God, I have so many questions, and I know we got his thing. So you mentioned not using it overnight, and then I know Cassandra had a question as well, and we'll get to that. You mentioned not using it overnight, so we should not, even as an adult, we should not be wearing it overnight, or
not wear your tampons overnight, because you really and any tampon label you see, you'll see toxic shock syndrome. The tampons are really there, especially if you have like a heavy flow or whatever. It's more of a convenience, right? Same thing. It absorbs the blood before it exits. So especially if you have, you're heavier on your first 2 days, that's when most people will wear them, or you have a lot of activity to do, you just want to safeguard, you don't want to make sure you're not leaking. That's when you're using them. Overnight, you just need a really good overnight pad, or I would even say wear Thinx underwear. So the period panties are really, really good for overnight protection. Instead of using the pad overnight. The other thing you could use is something like maybe a Diva cup or the rings. So the menstrual rings, there are quite a few different brands out there, but you can wear those up to about 12 hours. And most of us will get on average about 7 to 8 hours of sleep, but you definitely don't want to leave a tampon in for extended periods. They usually caution anything more than 6 hours is bad because it increases your risk of, say, toxic shock syndrome.
Wow. So never heard of period panties either. So I don't know where I've been. I didn't get taught this stuff. I learned everything on my own. Mm-hmm. So one more question, then we're going to go to the question that Cassandra had, which was about the cup that you brought up. I know that you mentioned for tampons that it should be organic. Same thing with pads, or does it?
Okay. As best as possible. I mean, again, anything that you use on your body, your skin is your biggest organ, right? So you want to take care of your body. You only get one. So you want to use things on your body, whether it's lotions, deodorants, or whatever, that are healthy, that are not chemically laden, And again, when it gets to things like, for example, the vaginal opening, because the lining is epithelial lining, you can absorb things a lot more easily there. You want to use things, again, that are more natural than anything else. So there are a lot of, and it may cost you a little bit more, but when you think about it, you're not having your period every single day. So
Right.
if, you can look at different products, again, honey pot, seventh generation. If you don't want to, if that's going to be expensive, then think of something like the period panties. You can just, buy a few of those, keep them in rotation, but they absorb the moisture and they don't leak. And so that's another great alternative. So most people just wear those. A lot of people wear those and are very comfortable in them, especially for overnight use if you're heavy, that kind of thing. So, you have a lot of options out there that are a lot better than the options that would have gone before. Because I mean, 15 years ago, we didn't have all of these. So,
Right.
we just had Always and Carefree and Kotex, and I think that was about it.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. Okay, cool. So great information. Thank you so much for sharing. Any of my guests that's on here, if you have any questions, you're welcome to put it on here. So Cassandra had a question. She said, I'm just gonna say this. She said she liked the idea of the period panties for her girl. And then she said you touched on the cups, but can you give us a little bit more information about the cups? Because this is like a new thing on the market. My friend, we were riding to, but I love going grocery shopping with my friends because you just make the trip a little bit just better, right? And so we were like on the grocery store, and she was like, "Yeah, my friend came from out of town, and she showed me how to use the cup. It's the best thing ever. You want to try it?" I'm like, "Absolutely not!" Like I'm just like old school, like what has been working for me since I've been a teenager. I'm using the same stuff. And so I don't know about like all this new stuff on the market. Like I told you,
Right.
I period panties. So I'm gonna have to look into that. So tell us a little bit more about the cups. Anything we should know specifically about them? Any particular brand? Like, what can you tell us about the cups?
So I will say for the period cups, if we're talking about a teenager, I would say you're probably better off with the tampons and the period panties, because if they're not sexually active, then that may be a little bit harder of a concept for them to kind of get, and it may be a little bit more uncomfortable. For the adults though, especially those who are sexually active, the cup is a great option. And it's just like a little cup. And what you do is you're gonna go ahead and fold it. I don't even have one with me here, but you fold it and you insert it, and then you kind of release it. And there's a string that you can pull it out. But before you pull it out, you want to make sure you break the suction. Fit is really important. So it might take a couple times, of you putting it in, just to kind of get accustomed to how it feels. But if it's in properly, what happens is, because it fits around the cervix, so
Mm-hmm.
that everything kind of flows into the cup, because the ring of the cup, if this is the cervix coming down, the ring of the cup fits around basically the cervix, and everything kind of just flows into that. And then you would go ahead and just break the suction lightly and then pull it out. You don't want to kind of pull it out with a lot of that pressure, because it kind of suctions on there. So you just break the suction by just giving a gentle squeeze and just kind of pulling it out that way. The same thing with the rings or the disc. So different brands have different names, but the rings are kind of similar for those women who, like, let's say they've had a baby and they have prolapse. I actually will tell them, if you getting back into activity and you have a prolapse and it's not severe, let's say, you want to enjoy like you're running or whatever, but you feel like I've got a little bit of heaviness, I will still recommend you see a pelvic therapist for that. But one of the things that can make it feel very comfortable is using the ring or the disc when you're having your cycle, because what it does is it fits it's a ring up in the vaginal, against the vaginal wall. And again, the cervix is here, so everything kind of goes into the ring. But because it's all the way around, it supports the vaginal wall. And it's through that support that you get the decrease in some of those symptoms that women may feel with regards to prolapse and things of that sort. So a lot of women have reported that actually feels really good.
Awesome. So definitely something that I'll have to look into. I'm not gonna lie though, like when you're talking about it and pinching and putting it up and suction, it just sounds so uncomfortable. And it's probably not, but it just sounds I don't know.
I mean,
But
it's like the first time you see a tampon with an applicator. You remember the applicators back in the day were cardboard. They weren't the nice, like, and you're like, well, what the heck is that? And
Yeah.
you're like, where does that go? That just doesn't look right. And I mean, I cringe just looking at it. So I mean, and it's pretty much the same thing, but once you start using them and you get accustomed, especially the fact that with a cup, you can wear it usually up to about 8 to 12 hours, depending on your flow. You know, most people, if they don't have to mess with a pad, they're happy.
Right. And I'm the same way. So I do not like the passing. So that's why when you're saying like wearing it overnight, I'm like, like I just think the whole everything. I know you're a doctor, you probably definitely think different. I just think the whole thing is just disgusting, if I just be honest. And so it freaks me out every month when I even have to go through this process. And so I'm just like, whatever I can do so that I don't have to see it as much. Less
Mhm.
like that's just like kind of where my mind is. I don't know about anybody else, but I will look into these other alternatives because I am getting older and I'm noticing changes. And
Mhm.
so with that being said, there may be some changes that I need to make based on like what I use, how often I'm using it, and things of that nature. So I appreciate that information for sure.
Oh, you're welcome.
So one of our guests on the Zoom says that her greatest fear is a cup emptying in public because her flow is like really, really heavy. What can you say to that?
If the cup is in there properly, it won't do that. But what I will say is that, again, average wearability, you can go if you're not having a super heavy flow up to 8 hours. I mean, up to 12 hours for some people, even with the cup in this. You're probably, once you get around that 6 hour mark, I will say kind of, schedule, think about your activities and really kind of plan that around, your activities that you're doing. So if you're going to be out for 4 hours, then absolutely. If you're going to be out all day, because the other thing that a lot of people don't like is they don't like having to mess with the cup. They don't like having to, out in public. They're like, oh, it's dirty. I'm in a public bathroom and I've got to do this. And, they like to be able to empty in the comfort of their home. So that may be something to consider with regards to, uh-oh, did you lose me?
No, I'm here. Can you hear
Okay,
me?
I can hear
Yeah,
you.
I'm here. Yeah.
So the thing is that, if you're out and about for long periods of time, you don't want to do the whole public bathroom thing. There are a lot of people who are like, "Ugh, don't want to change this in a public bathroom." But so you can kind of cater your wear to your activity. Usually at about 6 hours, I will say just go ahead and check. You might want to wear a liner, like a panty shield or something like that, but definitely you don't need anything heavy. But if you're super heavy on your earlier days, then you might want to wear a panty shield and kind of be more conscious of what's happening at or around 6 hours. But you can definitely wear it longer than that. But then that would kind of give you a good gauge as to what your flow is, which may be different from someone else. Like someone else may be able to go 6, 8 hours and be fine.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
if you're you shouldn't though bleed through a cup in like 6 hours. Shouldn't.
Gotcha.
But everyone is
Wow.
different. So that may just be, your flow or where you're at in the month.
Sounds amazing. So it's something I will definitely look into. Thank you so much. So let's kind of fast forward. So we start as this little girl, just talking about us, we're going through puberty, then, our teenage years, and eventually we find our boo thing, and then, we start having sex, and then we end up pregnant, however the process goes for everybody. And then now we have the baby. And then what a lot of moms experience is we experience the postpartum. And I know that we've been on the other topic for a while, so I won't go into this for a really long time, but I know that I went through a really, really bad postpartum depression with my first child. I can't say that I necessarily remember it with my other two, but I know it was really, really bad with my first one. I was a teenager, I had to drop out of college, didn't really feel like I had support, didn't know like the changes my body was going through. I was still a young lady, didn't know what to do with a new baby. I mean, like all these different changes and things
Mhm.
evolving in my world all at once, to the point it was really, really bad. And I would be transparent and share part of my testimony. I did try to take my life. Thank God I'm still here. Amazing. But what do we say like to the moms who may be dealing with postpartum right now? Or is it something that we just all go through and then we have to just kind of manage it? I guess the best way we can. How does postpartum work after pregnancy?
So after pregnancy, it is not uncommon for women to have some level of anxiety. And it really is dependent on where they're at. We are located in Atlanta. This is a city of transplants. A lot of people move here for work, for change, for whatever reason. And so they may not have their family network here. That in and of itself is very overwhelming to take care of a new baby and not have any family support, go-to people, that kind of stuff. So really and truly, what I tell a lot of my moms when I'm working with them during pregnancy is you need to already start curating your own village. You need to start having the people around you that you need. And if you don't have that, then start looking at moms groups, start looking at different communities where you feel like, you know what, I vibe this community. I feel like I fit here. I feel like, I can be myself around these people. But you really need to start building and creating your community, whether that's in your church community, within your neighborhood community, online groups, other groups within your area, those types of things. The other thing is that if you are noticing that you are having these feelings of overwhelm, these feelings of anxiety, especially if you never had them before, then it is okay for you to find someone to talk to. PSI International is a great organization that you can go to online, and they have a directory, so you can search for someone, a mental health therapist, that is versed in the postpartum period. I know 3 really amazing mental health therapists in the Atlanta metro area. I'd be happy to share those names with you.
Yes, absolutely.
But those, find someone that you can talk to. The other thing is in helping. One of the reasons why, like my postpartum follow-ups with moms, I tell moms I want to see them at 3 weeks, because when they have the baby, they're in the hospital, presumably on average 2 days. They get discharged and they're not seeing anybody else for 6 weeks. And typically what happens is it's like, well, if you feel like something's going on, call the nurse's line at your doctor's office. When you call there, usually what you hear is, well, if you think it's an emergency, just go to the ER. Well, that's not
Yeah,
helpful to any mom, because they're like, well, do
right.
I really, is it an emergency? I don't want to bother anybody. And then they've got all these things going on. And so I usually go in and check women, because I'm like, what questions and concerns do you have? Lay it all on me. What is going on? How are you feeling? Because I can automatically go ahead and say, we need to make an appointment with this person. We need to get this person in here. Here's this resource or whatever have you. So they don't feel like they're alone in that process.
Yes.
But I will encourage people, never feel like it is too much of a burden for you to talk to someone. If you don't have people within your immediate circle to talk to, find a professional, because the reality is that's what we do. Right? That's
Yeah.
what we do. We are there to help you. And we certainly know that. I mean, I'm a mom. I got diagnosed with postpartum depression after my son. It was bad. Like I never had anxiety in my life. There were days when my sister and my mom had come to visit. Well, actually, my mom was gone by that point in time. My sister was still here, and they were coming from outside the country. And I remember one day my sister was like, "We should get out. We can do it today." I got down the driveway, started bawling. We drove the car back up, and she was like, "But you made it down the driveway today."
Yeah.
And like she was like, "You remember when?" And we talk about it and we laugh. And sometimes I still cry about it, because I'm like, I feel like I was being so ridiculous. But I told, the level of overwhelm that was happening, I
Yeah.
can't even describe it. It was something like I've never experienced before. And so you really need to find people that you can speak to, because if left unchecked, and it doesn't happen in everybody. I mean, the amount of people that it will happen in is not that high. Postpartum depression happens in, I think the stats are 1 in 7 women postpartum.
Okay.
But then if left unchecked, and if the people around you don't know what to look for, and then you're ending up with things like postpartum psychosis. Then you're ending up with the moms who are taking their lives, who may be endangering their kids, not because they are bad people and that's what they want to do,
Right.
but because there is an imbalance occurring that they themselves cannot control.
I love that. I love that. So one of the things that you mentioned is going, like, maybe from even finding out that you're pregnant. You said
Mhm,
prior to having a baby, making sure you plug into a village or a tribe. And so I
mhm,
love that. And that's why I go so hard for moms now, because I want to be that support that I wish I would have had when
mhm.
I was younger. Or I want to be able to provide the resources and the tools and the encouragement, the empowerment that I wish I would have had or had knowledge of not to say that it wasn't out there. I didn't know to tap into it. Nobody told me that.
Yeah.
And so that's why I really go hard for moms, because I don't want any mom to have to experience anything that I went through. I know it was really, really bad. Like I said, I don't really remember it with second and third baby. But for sure with the first one, because I was a teenager, 19, fresh out of high school, first year in college. I didn't know what to experience. And so that's really, really, really good. What you mentioned. Thank you so much for how you kind of put that together and put that perspective on postpartum. So okay, puberty, we're a little girl. We moved into a postpartum, maybe. You said 1 of 7. I love that. I love statistics. So I didn't know that. That's awesome. And then my second baby, sex drive got low. I'm not really feeling you. We can cuddle, but that's all I want to do. I don't want to do anything else. Like, I'm tired. I have cooked. I've breastfed. I don't want to do. I've worked at that. I wasn't even an entrepreneur at that time, so I was working full time. And so I got all my kids are 3 years apart. So I got a toddler, like we mentioned in the beginning. I got this infant, and you trying to rub up on me. Ain't nobody trying to do that today, tonight, at all.
At all.
So what do you say to those moms? Like, what can we do? What are some of the things that can help us naturally to be able to help with that low sex drive?
So there are a few things that you have to understand after you've had a baby. And the biggest thing I tell people is context. Before you had this baby, you could get frisky whenever you wanted, wherever you wanted, didn't matter, because you didn't have to worry about nothing else.
Right.
Now you've got a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Now you might be in the middle of, hugging, kissing, caressing, and you hear, and somebody's crying. I'm like, oh man, or, you're trying to get your groove on, and you, mommy, and because now they're a toddler and they could talk a little bit, or they knock on the door, they just climb in the bed or whatever have you, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know. So it's just a different dynamic. So we have to understand context. One of the things that I will tell my moms that I work with and families that I work with, it is okay to plan sex. Sex is important. It is a vital part of your relationship, intimacy in of itself. Because when we say sex, most people think penetration, and you can have a really great time even if nothing goes anywhere inside of anything. But intimacy is very important. And so we really want to make sure that we are making time for that. If it is that you don't feel, and I've been there, that you don't feel like doing anything, then that's okay. You have to be ready. But it's also helping your partner to understand that. So communication is going to be extremely important, right? And if you're in a really good relationship, then that should be okay, because you're like, listen, babe, here's where I am.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how I feel. I love you with everything in me, but I'm not there right now.
Right.
Okay. And if you feel like you need help with that, and I always tell my moms, if you feel like you need help helping them to understand that it's not happening right now, just call me, or have him call me, or have him come to your appointment. We'll talk about it, because that's something that needs to happen. If you feel like you don't have the words, and I will have them for you. So, communication is key. Like I said, it's okay to plan a rendezvous, right? The kids are if you've got a toddler and they're in daycare, then dang it, plan a lunch date.
Mm-hmm.
Get a quickie. It's okay. Be adventurous. Think of all the things that you would have done pre-kids, if you were a frisky teenager, if you were, young 20s, whatever, all the things that you would have thought about. Oh, like, let's do this. Oh, like, let's do this. Like, you want to meet me for lunch? Have a code word, do whatever, but plan something, get it on the calendar. And, this is our time. This is our night. We're going to be together. It doesn't mean that you might have sex. You might not, but plan that together time. It's going to be really, really important. The other thing is, there's a number of reasons why sex may be uncomfortable. For one thing, women who breastfeed typically tend to have lower estrogen levels. And as a result of that, they're going to experience more vaginal dryness. This phenomenon comes back again when they go through menopause, because with menopause, your estrogen levels will drop and vaginal dryness is very common. So lubricate. Just because you use lubrication does not mean that there is something wrong with you. Okay. It can actually make things feel really good. So lubricate. There are quite a few. There's silicone lubricant. It doesn't lose that slip, right? It's like, for all, all of my women who are listening that have 4C hair, You understand the need for good slip in that conditioner. Well, this is like that. So, silicone lubricant is great. The only time I would not use it is if you're going to use any type of sex toys, because most of the sex toys that most people use are medical grade silicone, and the silicone it can impact that material on the sex toy. So we don't want to use that. We would want to use a water-based lubricant. Water-based lubricants are great. They don't hold that slip for as long. You may have to reapply, especially if you're in the shower or something like that. But they're great. They tend to work really well for people who may be more sensitive. There are a lot of great options out there. Oil-based, like coconut oil, stuff like that. You can use those. But if you need to lubricate. The other thing is foreplay is your friend. A lot of foreplay. I mean, I usually will tell a lot of my guys, when they come in with their wives, listen, you can get a lot, as my grandmother used to always say, you can catch a lot more with honey than you can catch a lot more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. So sweeten the pot for yourself. Okay. Right. Foreplay is your friend. If she's got a toy, use it. If she don't have a toy, then be creative. A lot of exploration, oral sex, a lot of touching, a lot of kissing, hugging, caressing. The more relaxed you make her, the better off you are. Don't just be like, yeah, let's put something in. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
And they're like, really? No, it won't, baby. And if it hasn't worked, now I don't know why you think it will, but it won't work. So help me to help you. But those are kind of some of the things that you want to talk about or you want to address in that postpartum period. And again, if you're having pain, so if you've tried some lubrication and you've tried, increasing foreplay and you've tried all these things and it didn't help and you're still having pain, pelvic floor therapy is phenomenal because what we do is we start to work on those muscles. Maybe you had some scar tissue, maybe that delivery was long, maybe you had some perineal tearing, maybe you had a cesarean and it's still painful, maybe you've got some other trauma in there. We help to address that manually. But outside of that, give yourself grace and give yourself some time. You might have a friend who said, oh, I stopped bleeding at 2 weeks and we were having sex at 2 weeks, even though I hadn't seen the doctor.
Yeah.
You're not your friends. You are you. Give yourself grace and be ready to move when you are ready, not when other people are ready, when you are ready.
Right.
So that's the biggest thing I would tell moms.
Yeah. So thank you so much because I know I went to the doctor and asked like, what's wrong with me? That was the question because I'm like, I was doing it fine before, like, what's wrong with me? So it's so important that we have conversations like this and know, number one, we're not alone. And then to know that there is help and to know that we're normal, like it's okay. And so thank you so much, Dr. J, for that. And so I will say, so I had a mom retreat for my clients about 2 weeks ago. And we got on this topic about the low sex drive. And we brought up going to the vitamin store and getting a horny goat weed. What is your perspective on that? Like, it's supposed to help you, like, get in the mood and wanna, so what is your perspective on the horny goat weed?
I don't know if it will. I don't know. I'm not familiar with. I mean, growing up on an island, we got what we call the Bushman, and there's a plant for that. There's always something. So they might tell you drink this tea or take this herb or whatever. But I don't know. If horny goat weed will truly increase your sex drive. What I do tell women though is be mindful because we also have to be mindful of what stage you're at. And there are a lot of things happening. It's not just you had a baby, it's your body has changed. So you have to also think about the context surrounding why is sex not what it was. For a lot of women, it could be body image. It could be they don't feel comfortable in their body anymore, so they're not motivated to have sex anymore. It could be that they're hurting, and when we're in pain, we don't want to have sex anymore. It could be that, well, I feel really uncomfortable having sex. What if my kid walks in? It could be truly that they're like, dude, I just have no desire. Like, you touching me does nothing for me right now. Like but we really kind of need to get down to the root of what's happening, not just, oh, well, I feel like I can't have sex right now. And so in establishing that, then we can kind of figure out what's happening. Sex therapists are also really amazing resources, both for individuals and for couples. But going back to what I talked about before, one of the things that I will have my clients do is something called pleasure mapping. After you've had a baby, and with any of my clients that have sexual dysfunction, I want to make sure that you can get aroused. So I often do this activity called pleasure mapping, where I have them, work on touch. And I know for a lot of people, out there, they frown on things like touching and masturbation and stuff like that. But what I tell people is, you can touch your head, you can touch your arm, you can touch your knee, you can touch your foot. They're all body parts. You can touch your vulva, it's a body part. There's nothing wrong, and there shouldn't be a negative connotation that surrounds it, because just like the other body parts, it's part of you, it's part of who you are. And what you're looking for is it that you just can't feel anything? Can you feel when you touch it? Can you not feel it? So are we dealing with something that may be sensory, which now goes beyond just what you feel, and then we
Yeah.
need to have a medical professional step in? Or does it just not do anything for you? And we start mapping out areas that feel good. And you got to realize that when you've had a kid, things that might have felt good to you before just may not. Or
Yeah.
they may be things that you never even thought about before, but now all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, that feels amazing, right? It,
Yeah.
it, it can switch. And so you want to map and see what feels good. You need to first know what feels good for you before you can expect someone else to understand and know that. And in knowing that, then that's something that you can then share with your partner. I just did an interview with a sex toy shop owner out of Chicago. For those of you who are on Instagram, you can just go to my Instagram at the Pelvic Perspective, go to IGTV, it's on there. And we talked about using vibrators for people who have issues with sex, whether it's pain or whatnot, or they've just had a baby, and using a vibrator to help stimulate sensation. And then having your partner do that with you. So even sometimes if we take the pressure off of sex and we take the penetration out of the picture, 30% of women orgasm with penetration anyway. The other 70% of us, we need a little bit more than that. Like we can care less whether you push something in. Like, you need to survey the whole landscape, and you need to incorporate the entire landscape in everything that you do. And so that's important, because we want to make sure that our partners are on board with that. We
Mhm.
want to make sure that they understand that, and that, it's as much your pleasure as it is his. So you need to be
Mhm.
invested in your own pleasure
Mhm.
and share that with your partner, and also be able to reciprocate, because you can't be having all the fun and like them,
Right.
them doing all the work. So like, at least be able to reciprocate. But
Yeah.
you want to make sure that you kind of share that with your partner, so that they can kind of, you know it's almost like relearning your
Mhm.
body after a baby. And I tell people, think of it as, it was your youthful body, and now you're in like your big girl body. Like, now you're in your mature body, right? You
Mhm.
have matured, you have changed, you have evolved. And so now we're exploring that body, and it may or may
Right.
not be the same as it was before, and that is okay. What we're learning to do is appreciate the body that we have now, appreciate how things feel, how things, how you sense things now in this particular stage. And that can give a lot of women a little bit more clarity, and
Mhm.
kind of help take a lot of the stress out of that postpartum period.
Awesome. Great, great information. Especially when you talked about kind of communicating with your partner and exploring things, and kind of perspective is what I keep hearing you say tonight. And when it comes to different categories or different topics that we're talking about, but I love that about having a conversation, because it's just like, okay, he wanted, I can't give it to him. What's wrong? Let me try to figure out all these alternatives, especially instead of coming together, at the table and just having this conversation like, okay, what does this look like? What do we need to do? Do we need to get help? And I don't
Mhm.
think we have those conversations enough. So I absolutely love, love, love that. So the last topic that I want to hop into before we go off tonight, and those who are on Zoom, if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and drop those in the chat right now for Dr. J. The last question is menopause. So, some people don't like it. Some people is like, yeah, I'm gonna say my perspective on it. So y'all know I already talked about not liking the cycles. So I can't wait until I get to a point where I don't have one no more. I'm just being honest. Now, I don't know if I want the hot flashes and all the other stuff that comes with it. You be seeing people in there, they'll just be in the store in line and then their glasses will just start fogging up or something. And so I do know that it comes with a lot of stuff. I'm not sure exactly what to expect. I've never like fully researched it. But I am happy about not having the cycles. I will be honest about that. So just give us a little bit of perspective on that. What is something that we should look out for, like early signs of it, or just about menopause in general? Give us some perspective on that.
So menopause can look different to a lot of people.
Mhm.
Typical symptoms that people will hear about are the hot flashes. They're going to have vaginal dryness because your estrogen level again is low.
Mhm.
A lot of people may have vulvar and vaginal changes. So when we talk about the vulva, we're talking about the labia, we're talking about the clitoris, and we're talking about things that happen there. So your clitoris may recede. You may start to notice tightening across the skin. The skin feels different. um, the vaginal opening, you may start to notice discomfort, so that you can have shortening and tightening of the vaginal opening and the vaginal canal. So that makes sex uncomfortable because now it's tighter, it's shorter. And a lot of that is because with the estrogen, with the changes in the hormones, the tissues are going to change because those hormones are very important to the tissues in that area. So if you're starting to notice any of these things, and then the other thing is that we kind of don't think of, we think about a lot of the sexual changes. Your body may change, so you might realize, you know what, I'm holding on to this weight, and so now we got a lot of things like with self-esteem. My clothes don't fit the same. So there's a lot of things that go into it, not just physical but psychological changes as well. If you're starting to notice sexual changes, I always recommend pelvic PT, sex therapy. Boom. Like those are going to be your two best friends. A lot of doctors will do hormone replacement. Again, one of the simplest things you could do if you notice that sex is starting to change is use a lubricant. Because if your only symptom is vaginal dryness, use a lubricant. If you start to notice other changes in your vulva, and I will tell women, if you have never looked down there, go get you a handheld mirror
Mhm.
and go look. Become acquainted with yourself. Say hey every once in a while, like every week. We tell everybody do breast exams so that we know if we feel something weird, then at least we know when that we need to go get help. But a lot of women don't do that with the rest of their body, especially their vulva. And what happens is they don't know when something is wrong and they just assume, okay, well, that might be normal because they have no baseline,
Yeah.
which is what a self breast exam gives you. It gives you a baseline. We need to also have a vulvar baseline. And so go take a look, take a peek, tell her, hey, see how she's doing. But you want to know, because if you're seeing those skin changes, that's going to be important. And a lot of people will wait very late because they're like, oh, well, I guess this is just par for the course. No, that means that those tissues are changing. You want to make sure you go see your gynecologist, go see your pelvic therapist, go see a sex therapist. The gynecologist can give you, like I said, replacement estrogen, replacement hormones to help with some of those changes. They may also, between them or the pelvic floor therapist, may have you start on using dilators if we've got a lot of that shortening and tightening of the vaginal opening that's causing pain, or if we're having any other pelvic floor issues. So they might start using vaginal dilators to help with maintaining the vaginal opening so that sex is no longer painful. You might notice leaking and things of that sort. Again, pelvic floor therapists can help you with that. But those are some of the things that people will notice as they start going through menopause. And like I said, don't take for granted a lot of the psychological changes, because you have to be cognizant of how you feel. There are a lot of women that go through it and they're like, oh my God, like I feel different. I don't feel like myself. And women are living a lot longer. So you're going to spend at least a third of your life postmenopausal. And we can't spend a third of our life crappy or feeling
Right.
bad for ourselves. Like we need to be living our best life. So again, when you start noticing these things, make sure you get help, but also recognize that menopause is just a natural transition, right? We start going through perimenopause from as early as our mid 20s. That's when your sex hormones, they peak in the mid 20s, and then after that they start to gradually decline. So
Wow.
things like your nutrition is going to be important. things like physical activity is going to be important, stress management, just lifestyle management in general. All those things are super important, and how you show up for menopause really will help to dictate how your body goes through that period and goes through that transition.
Wow. Wow. Good information. Thank you so much. And so that was going to be my question, like at what age did you answer that? And I did
Mhm.
not know it was that young. So wow, good information. Thank you so much for that. And so one of the guests that is on the Zoom said, any advice for boys going through puberty? So much outward for girls, but what about boys? I'm definitely afraid, just like Tramika, of talking to my son, but he feels super comfortable talking to me while I cringe on the inside.
If he feels comfortable talking with you, accept that as a blessing and a compliment, and meet him where he's at. So right now, depending on his age, he's just looking for information. And so we start talking about the things that they go through. He might start noticing more erections, which is normal. For men, an erection is a normal. They don't only get erect when they're having sex, but men usually will wake up in the morning with an erection. They might have several erections throughout the day, but that's a normal physiological thing that happens because their body is part of that circulation process, and they need to be able to become erect and and essentially deflate normally, as a normal thing, to make sure that everything is functioning. That's just normal part of their plumbing. It's like if you had pipes, you want to make sure that you run the water, because if you don't and you had a house and you just left it for years, you go turn on the pipe, it may or may not run. Just never know. So you want to make sure that you understand that that's normal. The other thing for them is they may get alarmed if they have a wet dream, because if they don't know what that is and they think, oh my God, I peed the bed, right? That'll do something to your mind. Think of a grown person. If you woke up one morning and the bed was wet underneath you, oh my God, something's
Right.
wrong. I'm dying. Jesus help me. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
it's like, what the heck is happening? So it's the same thing for them. If they are not expecting that, then it can affect them a little bit. So you want to make sure you talk to them and just kind of let them know what to expect. The other thing is the emotions that go along with that. So you're transitioning into manhood now, and you may have some emotions. You may find that you're more attracted to individuals. You might find that you get aroused sometimes. Just you might see someone that you like, and just, oh my God, all of a sudden you feel like you can't control your body parts. Things like, but just helping them to be aware, helping them to feel comfortable by you staying kind of calm, because again, think of it as a great honor that he's coming to you to find out these things. Because again, he could be going to, whomever, and
Right.
getting information, and we don't know what kind of information he's going to get. Right. So again, you want to be that person that lays the groundwork for the information that your children receive.
Awesome. Love it. Any other questions from any of our guests that are on the Zoom? Thank y'all so much for joining. And while we're waiting on that, thank you so much, Dr. J. So we have
You're
talked about
welcome.
puberty to menopause. I have learned a lot. I'm sure the viewers have learned a lot as well. And so if you're on Zoom live, if you can drop in the chat, let us know like what was one of your biggest takeaways, or if you want to drop a few. If you're watching live on Facebook, let us know as well. What were some of your big takeaways? What did you learn, so that we can go back through the comments? And so thank you so much for everybody who has watched, who has shared, who has tagged another mom. I know that, again, I have learned a lot. So this has been amazing. It's actually 10:06, so I'm going to let all of you go. Before we do that, though, again, thank you so much for being able to come and just educate our community. Like, we need to start doing more of this. We need to start having more platforms, more times, the top of the conversations, where those topics that we don't necessarily talk about a lot. And so I really, really appreciate you from the bottom of my heart for doing this. Let us know one more time if anybody has any questions, they want to come to you for any type of services, where can they find you?
So the easiest way to get through to me is going on the website, www.jmmhealthsolutions.com. You can schedule appointments there. You can head to the contact me page and put in your info, and that comes directly to my email. Info@JMM Health Solutions is jmmhealthsolutions.com is my email address. You can find me on Facebook, JMM Health Solutions. You can find me on Instagram, which is probably where I'm most active, at The Pelvic Perspective. And I will send all of that stuff to you so that you can share that with your guests.
Awesome. Sounds great. I will definitely share it. So if you're on Facebook, I'll go ahead and edit the caption of this particular live video and I'll plug it in there. And then when we send this out on YouTube and through the email list, I'll make sure the information is there as well.
Awesome.
Well, that's all I have. You answered so many questions tonight. I'm going to copy this information, make sure I get this out. Thank you again. I appreciate it. Thank you for everyone who came on. Thank you for everybody who have viewed. You all have a productive rest of the week. It is Thanksgiving this week. So if you are celebrating Thanksgiving, have a great time with your family. I do want to say in honor or reverence of Thanksgiving, we will not have a Sunday night live chat next weekend. I want to be able to have some time to spend with my family as well. And so meet us here the first Sunday in December where we'll have another topic that we're going to discuss. But until then, everyone have a great night. Thank you again so much.
Thank you.